Hi, I'm Adam Porter, and this is my top 100 all killer, all filler board games. And so the aim with this list is to highlight games which may not feature in a standard top 100 list. So we're talking little games, really. Things with a short duration, things with simple rules, and things with smaller box sizes as well. I've kind of factored that portability into this list as well. And last video we did numbers 100 to 91. So in this video we're doing numbers 90 to 81. So this is part 2. So number 90 on the list is Piraten Kapern from Amigo. This is a pirate-themed dice rolling game, very simple Yahtzee type stuff. Rolling dice, re-rolling them, trying not to ever get 3 skulls. But if you can get 3 of a kind, 4 of a kind of the other symbols, then that's going to score you lots of points. And every round, another card is turned over that changes the rules or the scoring opportunities for every individual round. And if you ever start the round by rolling more than 3 skulls immediately, then you go into this little mini game where you're rolling dice and each result that you roll, each skull that you roll actually results in the other players losing points. So it's a very variable sort of Yahtzee type game, and that's what I really enjoy about it, is every round's different because the cards come out and you're just playing something slightly different from round to round. There's nothing groundbreaking here, but it is a fun Yahtzee variant and a nice little package. Number 89 is Beasty Bar from Verlag, and Beasty Bar is a take-that style game where you're laying down cards which represent a queue of animals trying to get into a nightclub. And once there are 5 animals laid out in this queue, then the front 2 will get in, the bottom 2 get kicked out, and then we play again and we keep on playing. But each animal that you place has some sort of special effect that alters the way that queue works, switches people around and stuff like that. And you're trying to get more of your animals in and the highest scoring animals into the nightclub. There's 3 different sets of this from Verlag, and you can mix and match these different sets to make the play style exactly the way that you want it. It's a really good, neat little game with some very funny artwork. And number 88 is Fruit Spy from Knizia and Jolly Thinkers. So this is a simultaneous selection game where you've got a bunch of different locations representing a farm, and they've got different scoring fruits laid out on them. There's also a farmer and the farmer's daughter. But you play a card face down on your turn by one of the locations, and then the next time that someone plays a card at that location, your card is going to be revealed. So you're gradually revealing bits of information as the game goes on, and when that card is revealed, sometimes that might have a special effect. It might wipe out the card that's just been placed on it, or if it doesn't, it might shift the farmer so they continue to move around, or the farmer's daughter moving around in the opposite direction. And at the end of the round, when everybody has played all the different cards, you're going to score points for being on the same location as the farmer's daughter. You're going to lose points for being on the same space as the farmer. And you're going to, the person who's got the highest numbered cards on a location are going to take the first fruits, the highest scoring fruits, and then the other players take the other ones. It's a really interesting little game of simultaneous selection, very chaotic. There's not a huge amount of strategy in there, but it's a really cute little product. You know, I love the way that Jolly Thinkers presents these games like Pick a Pig and Bucket King 3D, and this one is another really neat little example. The fact that it's by Knizia suggests that it's going to be a very simple rule set but create quite a big experience, and I think that's what this one is. Number 87 is Avenue, which is a roll and write game where we're connecting up, we're turning over cards, and they show the shape of paths that you're going to have to draw onto your grid, and you're trying to connect up various towers to different grapes and things like that so that you're scoring in each round. But the key thing here is your score must go up from each round, so your score in the second round must beat your score in the first round. Your score in the third round must beat your score in the second round, otherwise you get 0 for that round. And that just adds a really nice dynamic to the game, because you've got to have that, you've got to be thinking ahead and making sure that you're not overstretching in one particular round, because you're not going to be able to maintain it as you go into the next round and so on. So it's a clever roll and write. It's one that stands out a little bit from the pack, and it is quite a crowded market for roll and write games, or flip and write games in this case, but I think you could do worse than trying out Avenue. It's also available in an edition from Indie Boards and Cards, which is, I think it's called Kokoro, Avenue of the Kadama, I think that's the title, but tied in with that another card game you may have heard of called Kadama. Number 86 on my list is Claim. Now this is a two-player only trick-taking game. And they didn't exist really. There weren't any two-player trick-taking games until a few years ago. And then they started to come out, there's quite a few of them around now, but Claim was one of the first. And it's really nice. It's a game where you've got a fantasy type theme and the different cards have different special abilities and stuff like that. But essentially we start the game by, I play a card, you follow suit, if you can. If you can't, you play any card, and you're trying to beat me, and then the person who played the higher card gets to take a card, the visible card from the discard pile, but the other player gets a random one from the top of the deck, and you're building up a pile of cards which you're going to use in the second round of the game, which is a more conventional sort of trick-taking game where you're trying to score points by getting sets of cards and all those sorts of things. So it's a neat game with two different sections, which is just the added bit of substance that it needs, because basically a two-player trick-taking game doesn't have a lot going on unless you've got a little bit of something extra in there, because trick-taking games tend to rely on that interaction between players and reading the other players and memorizing what they've done and so on. So this game, and some others actually in the same genre, these two-player trick-taking game, adds a little bit extra, and it's really satisfying. It's a good game. There's several different versions again of this one. There's Claim 2, and then I think there's a bunch of other sets as well. I think they can be mixed and matched in various different ways. Clever game, Claim. And next on the list is number 85, which is Happy City from Game Right. And this is kind of a very, very simple tableau building game. So you're building up, you're gathering buildings, buying buildings from a central display that you're going to then put into your own tableau on the table in front of you. And these buildings are going to give you income, money, they're going to give you people, and they're going to give you happiness. And at the end of the game, your score is going to be equal to your happiness multiplied by your population of people. But you're going to need income as well in order to buy other cards, and ultimately there's a kind of set collection. When you buy bonus buildings, they require you to have sets of different coloured buildings. It's very, very simple, very basic, almost a game for children, but you can certainly play this a little bit more strategically as well, although it is very, very light. Lovely production as always from Game Right, and I would recommend this one as a kind of introduction to tableau building. Actually, that's something that Game Right has done so well with so many different genres. For example, Abandon All Artichokes is a great introduction to deck building, and Sushi Go is a great introduction to pick and pass gameplay like Seven Wonders or something like that. I love when they can streamline a popular gamer sort of mechanism and make it simple enough that anyone can play it, and that's what Happy City does. Number 84 is Wurfel Bohnanza. I think it's been re-released as Bonanza the Dice game fairly recently from Amigo. Now, Bonanza is a card game all about beans and farming and negotiating and trading and all this sort of stuff. The dice game is a Yahtzee variant again, a bit like Piraten Kapern. You're rolling dice, you're trying to gather together sets of dice to complete various levels on a card that you've got in front of you, essentially orders that you've got to complete in a certain specific order. But also when you're rolling dice, certain dice can, the other players sat around the table, they can use them as well. So if you're taking your time to build up to a big order, each time you're re-rolling, you're actually generating stuff for the other players around the table. So the great thing about this one is that it's not a Yahtzee game where one player takes their turn and everybody just sits and waits. This is a Yahtzee game where everybody's watching and everybody's engaged and concerned about what's happening on your turn. So it's a really good Yahtzee variant. Number 83 is another game from Jolly Thinkers, who made Fruit Spy, but this time it's a party game called Animocrazy, and I think originally this was called Democrazy, okay, which makes a little bit more sense. Animocrazy, not quite sure what that's supposed to mean, but the gameplay is the same. It's a Bruno Fiduti game, so it's chaotic as you would expect, and you can play it with a decent number of people. And basically in this game, you're gathering up tokens of different colours, but their value isn't really defined, and in each turn, you're going to play a card from your hand which is going to represent some sort of rule about scoring or about what you're allowed to do in the game. So you select this card from your hand, you place it down, and everyone votes on whether they want that rule to come into play or not. And so it's extremely chaotic, and it can be quite mean-spirited, it can be very unfair, but it is interesting, this whole idea of playing a card, everyone voting to see if that actually happens or not, and that affecting the scoring. You can think you're winning for the whole game, and then somebody could play a card which says actually all your stuff is worthless. Everyone votes yes, of course, because they don't want you to win, and suddenly you find that you've lost and the person who was trailing behind has won the game. Totally chaotic, but it's an experience unlike any other game that I've played, and I think if you go into it with the right mindset of just having this wacky sort of time around the table with your friends, then I think it's great. I think it's a really interesting sort of experimental game, and this is a lovely production of it as well. So Animocrazy. Number 82 is Harvest Dice, another roll and write. This time we're rolling dice and they represent, the different colours represent different vegetables. The number indicates in which column or row you can place that vegetable, and then subsequent vegetables of that type have to be placed adjacent to a previous one. So if you've played a tomato in column number 4, then you're going to have to place another tomato adjacent to it. It can't go somewhere else. And so that nice little bit of location-based stuff, as well as you have to actually draw the vegetable, so that's kind of cute. Yeah, the nice little opportunities for a little bit of creativity in terms of how you draw these things. And then if you're unable to place, you start filling in this pig pen, and when you've filled out enough columns of that, that starts to give you special abilities that can manipulate how you do other stuff. But crucially, once everyone's selected a dice and there's one dice left in the pool, that dice indicates the type of vegetable that's going to increase in value. So the scoring isn't determined until we start drafting these dice, and one dice is left over, and that remaining dice impacts on the scoring. And that's always a nice mechanism. I love it when we've got a drafting system where people are playing different cards or different dice, and then one thing's left, but that one thing that's left has a significant impact on how the round plays out. I think that's always a nice dilemma, and it works really well in Harvest Dice. Number 81 is a very unusual game from Verlag. This is Polterfass, which is a sort of a dice rolling game. Again, lots of dice rolling games in this list, but they're not actually dice, they're barrels, and they've got a number painted on the top of them. You shake them up in a little cup, you tip them out, and only the barrels that are left standing up actually count. And one of you is going to be, in any given round, is going to be the sort of barkeeper, and they're going to decide how much beer, or I suppose they're supposed to be beer, how many barrels of beer they've actually got in stock. So they're going to make that decision secretly. All the other players then bid for how many barrels of beer they want, and how many they think that the barkeeper can achieve by rolling and re-rolling these various barrels. And there's this whole sort of mind games of bluffing and double bluffing and pushing your luck. Like if we all go low, we don't actually want that much beer, and so everyone puts in a low bid, then whatever the bar manager manages to achieve, he gets to keep all the rest, right? But if the bar manager suggests he's going to provide a certain amount of beer, and everyone goes over that and they go bust, then the bar manager gets to keep all of it, right? So there's this whole sort of reading each other. I'm not explaining it very well. It's quite a complicated game, quite hard to get your head around for something that's actually relatively simple once you start playing it and getting into the flow. But I think it's a really, really good one, and really nice, unique use of components, which is something that Verlag does really well. Frequently one of the reasons that I love that company so much. But Polterfass is an amusing little oddity from that company. And so, as always, we're going to finish up the video by looking at trends and patterns within my list. And we're starting to see some repeats here. What we're going to look at is designers, publishers, the themes that I enjoy, and also the mechanisms that I enjoy. The first things that we're starting to see some repetition here is the same publishers coming up time and again. So let me have a little look at my screen down here. We've got Amigo. Amigo Spieler has 4 games on the list so far in the first 20 games. Verlag has 3, and Jolly Thinkers has 2. So we're starting to get the same companies coming up time and again. We haven't seen the same designer represented multiple times yet. Okay, so every designer so far has been unique. In terms of themes, anthropomorphic animals, they've come up 4 times. Farming has come up 3 times, and a lot of the games are abstract, so 3 of those have come up that are utterly themeless. And in terms of mechanisms, we're ignoring the obvious mechanisms like hand management and set collection, which are going to come up so many times. But so far on the list, we've had a fair few roll and write, and I'm including flip and write games in there. How many have we had of those? 3 of those. We've had 5 games that are largely around dice rolling. And trick taking, we've got 2 of them. Games with modular rule sets, 2 of them. Party games, we've got 2. And simultaneous selection games, we've got 2. And so that wraps up numbers 90 to 81. And I'll be continuing to do 10 games at a time over the next few days. So please check in and see what comes up in the next list. I hope you've enjoyed this one. Please let me know in the comments what you think about my picks, and I'll see you next time. All the best.